Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all. Best Aaron Sorkin project.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Mark, walk with me.
What is it, Hal?
I want us both to sound really smart while we walk down a hallway and somehow are not out of breath.
If we just talk really fast, will that make us sound smart? I think it'll make us sound smart if we just talk fast.
Do you know one time before, I think Melina was trying to remember something backstage. Oh no, we were playing a game. We were playing like Words with Friends or something like that. It was something that was time-based. And when it was his turn, I just started peppering. Like, is it hard to walk and talk at the same time? Did you have trouble memorizing all that dialogue? Did you have to say it really fast? Did you ever have to say it really slow? Aaron Sorkin is now I have to, you know how like people have to reveal I have some tie to this? Mm-hmm. Time Warner is the parent company of CNN. If you hear them write about Time Warner, they have to say, I am, as is Aaron Sorkin, a graduate of Syracuse University. So we're fellow alumni of Syracuse. He did come back my senior year.
Really?
Yes. It was the 20th anniversary of the Syracuse stage. The Syracuse Drama Department, SU Drama, is affiliated with Syracuse Stage, which is a regional equity theater. Mm-hmm. So the first play of that season was A Few Good Men, and he came back and talked to the students. He came back into
hold on, let me guess. Did he come back and talk to the students from one end of a hallway to the end of it?
Yeah, you had to walk and follow him while he told you everything.
Amazing.
He spoke on the drama main stage, not the Syracuse stage, and you could not get into the room. I tried to get in as a minor. Like, I think there were majors that couldn't get in the room. It was absolutely packed. So that is what he carries there. Another fun Syracuse bit for you at the end of The American President when he's getting ready to give the State of the Union and they're doing the roll call. Those are all professors from Syracuse Drama that he's announcing.
Brilliant. I think I've always been a fan of Aaron Sorkin. Mm-hmm. I love his style. I loved A Few Good Men growing up. I love the way that he writes. I love the stories that he tells. I like the way he weaves things. I don't know if it's a work ethic, but his work proliferation is insane. He wrote, there were 58 episodes in the first 4 seasons of The West Wing, I think, and he wrote 57 of them solo. Like, it is wild. He is not without some controversies in some things, in that he'll have a whole writing staff and will refuse to let them do any work. He said he gave away story credit, like, as a bonus to people, even though he would do all of the work on it. And I know he's loud and bombastic in the ways that many of his characters are, but I can't argue with some of these stories being some of my absolute favorite pieces of television ever. And movies.
The stuff sticks. There's something to his dialogue that's aspirational. Mm-hmm. In that, like, oh, I wish I was that smart. Everybody's saying, you know, it's not like it's not the most realistic. It's every character is saying what somebody else wishes they were saying.
Yeah.
And there is something to that makes it stick in your brain and makes the characters memorable. When you think of Aaron Sorkin, you think of this gigantic body of work, and he's no slouch, but we're talking about 11 movies and 4 television shows, and that is it.
Yeah. But boy, are they good.
They're fantastic.
I will say, you mentioned that his language, the way that he writes, is aspirational in a way that nobody talks. I would argue that his characters and his storylines have an aspirational hope to them that the respective industries that they are in also does not share. Like, his West Wing is such an idealized version of the West Wing. His Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip is such an idealized version of SNL. Sports Night, The Newsroom, is an ideal version of what the news should be. He has these grand sweeping monologues about the way things should be and his thoughts on, you know, the way the world ought to be, that I agree with. When I hear them, I'm like, yeah, that would be nice if that were the case. And coming out of Emily Mortimer's mouth, it's all the better because she's so good and Jeff Daniels is so good. Can you tell which one of these I watched most recently?
Oh, yes. I think I can tell. Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
No, but we'll get to that one.
Yeah. I feel like we should talk about his television shows and then talk about his movies and then pick one of each.
That sounds great.
Decide from that.
Sure.
Let's start with TV because there are only 4 series in chronological order. You have Sports Night, a year after he starts Sport Night.
That was
Sport
the
Night.
European version.
Sport
Right.
Night. That's actually my deodorant. I wear Sport Night. You have Sports Night, which starts in 98. Then a year later in 99, he starts The West Wing. That is over in 2006, at which point he starts Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. That ends in 2007. He writes 3 movies in that time. And then in 2012, he starts on The Newsroom, which runs for 3 years.
3 seasons, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. 3 seasons.
Studio 60, sadly only 1 season.
I'm amazed looking at this. To be honest with you, that it went for 22 episodes. I'm shocked looking at that because my memory of it is that after 3 episodes, it was done.
It fell off. It did fall off midway through the season, I think, except when it was boosted midway through by John Goodman and his appearance on the show, which I thought was John Goodman showing up in Sorkin stuff is so fun because he's so good at it. He had that arc on the West Wing. He had that. I don't know if he was in any of the others because I just started Newsroom, but his arc on West Wing, but his character of a small town sheriff who is way more well read than the rest of the characters think he should be or is because he's an Aaron Sorkin character, which is the reason why it's like, but I encourage everyone. I know it's not going to win. And frequently we throw our subjective choices into the mix with our objective choices. I love the first 2 episodes of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Those 2 episodes, you don't have to watch the rest of the season. Just watch those first 2 episodes of Studio 60 and they play like a movie. And the cast is brilliant. The screenplay is brilliant, or teleplay is brilliant. It's executed beautifully. Yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about the first 2 episodes back to back. Watch them like a movie, and then you don't have to watch the rest of the season because at the end of the season, the last moment of that whole series is Bradley Whitford turning off the ghost light on a stage. The ghost light on a stage's entire purpose is to be the light that is on when all the other lights are off. It's the only reason it exists. You took away the function of the ghost light by turning it off. But yeah, I loved that show. At the beginning, I loved it.
I was out after the first episode.
Really?
As soon as I saw it, I said, this is not for me.
Fair.
And we could get into a whole discussion about that. Probably better saved for not the podcast because I'm always happy to talk comedy and television shows with you or anything. For that matter. But for the sake of brevity, it will not win. Not a chance.
While we're talking about Studio 60, before we leave, it's got a couple of great lines. Sure. Simon Helberg, Second City, buddy. I think that's part of it is we came up at Second City. We've been doing sketch comedy our whole lives, and that to watch, like, it's like when I was a kid, my dad didn't want to watch Doogie Howser because he was a doctor and it wasn't a realistic version of what it was.
Yeah. My dad doesn't like to play Monopoly.
Exactly.
True.
There you go.
True.
But I think that there were some great moments in it and there were some great exchanges on it. And I will just give you my favorite line. I have a favorite line from The Newsroom and a favorite line from Studio 60. And it's just little things. They're almost like little fortune cookies that Aaron Sorkin drops in. No comedian you admire has ever been afraid of silence. That sentence stuck with me. And as a student of comedy, I thought that was a really fun and astute thought. That and the moment when an exchange between Sarah Paulson and the late great Matthew Perry. Hey, in the read through, when I asked for the butter, I got a laugh, but when we did it in the show, I didn't. What was wrong? The second time you asked for the laugh. What'd I do the first time? You asked for the butter. That was another one of those moments you knew. You were gonna say it's these pithy moments, these little pithy scenes that stick with you though. And it's good things to remember if you have this job.
Yeah.
But it's not going to
win. No, it's not.
I feel like you viscerally do not like that show.
I have a visceral reaction to it for the same reason that you like it, which is like, I have a reverence for comedy and I've been working in it and at it for Lord, I don't know.
It was a drama about comedy.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah.
I'd say I've been in one form or another doing it. And it was a show about a comedy show that was supposed to be funny that didn't seem like it was funny at all in any way, shape or form. And that's where it broke down for me. I don't think that's like Aaron Sorkin is not a sketch writing guy. No. He writes great scenes, writes great dialogue, is not a sketch guy. So this idea of of that show's going to teach us what comedy is.
Right.
That's where I got off the bus, and it was pretty early in it. But if you like it, then it's great. You have it.
Yeah, I agree that
enjoy.
The comedy segments are not that funny.
Yeah.
But that's not what it was about.
Right.
And it also came out at the same time that a comedy about a comedy show came out that was great, which is 30 Rock. Same season.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
They dropped the same year, and it's like, oh, I'll watch if it's about a comedy show, I'll watch the funny one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way superior.
Yeah.
Because it was written by somebody who was the head writer of SNL. So the show seemed like it was, even the parts of it that weren't funny were intentionally done that way.
Right. Which one do you want to talk about next?
Sports Night is interesting because for the first, I think by maybe the entirety of the first season, if not part of it, there was a laugh track.
They faded the laugh track late in the first season.
Yeah. They finally got rid of it, and that, it never needed that. It's not good with the laugh track in it. That it hurt it, but it is a really smart show. It's really good. It was Josh Malina's first big television thing.
Yeah.
He has since gone on to, and this is not, at this point, this is the third appearance in a project for him. He's in both A Few Good Men and The American President, and did A Few Good Men on Broadway. So he was already a Sorkin guy. He is the Sorkin guy that we know.
Mm-hmm.
But he really kind of sings in this show. It's really good. Robert Guillaume is fantastic.
It's a brilliant
Peter Krause
cast.
Is great. Felicity Huffman, just a killer cast.
Yeah. It's Aaron Sorkin tackles this version of a television, of television, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or this version of a thing. And there are, there's a few different segments of entertainment that Aaron Sorkin, dives deep into. And ESPN is one of the great ones. Of course, do your version of ESPN, which this was written while he was up late writing something else. I think it was The American President. And he would have Sports Center on at night.
Yeah, he might have been. Oh, yeah, maybe he was writing them at the same time. American President came out in 95. So he would have been developing it for a while. It might be this could be something he had in a drawer.
Sure. Yeah, something else. Yeah.
There is something about it that makes it kind of a mirror image to the newsroom, and that they're both about the production of this television show, but more importantly, it's about the people around it.
Yeah.
I think it gets a lot of love, not only because it's a great show, because it's gone too soon.
Yeah.
It got canceled, and it never got the landing that it could have had. You never got to see what might have happened. And so there is this sort of hanging Chad element to it that makes it really compelling. But I mean,
it's not Sports Night.
I don't think it's Sports Night. I don't think it's the newsroom either. I think
we knew what it was when you said we're going to divide it up, TV versus film.
Yeah, it's definitely the West Wing.
Yeah,
but the newsroom,
100%.
I would say the opening scene of the newsroom where he's at the college forum is maybe one of my favorite Sorkin scenes in how it's written. And there's really all the stuff with, I don't know how deep you are into the show, but all the Allison Pill stuff that happens is fantastic. It just really is. I think eventually it just I think it sagged under its own weight at a certain point.
This was where my hole was I had not seen the newsroom. So I just started the newsroom when we picked this topic. And I think one thing that Sorkin does so well, and I think it's because he writes movies and he writes plays. I want to talk a little bit about his plays, but as an interlude between these. But I think that he does a great job of setting up characters and giving you the backstory that you need, the relationships that you need. Here's a character. Here's their important relationships. Here's their point of view. And now you have everything you need for this next 90 minutes of drama. And I think he sets that up so beautifully in the newsroom with every character in that show.
Sure.
Everybody gets their moment to shine. Everybody gets their moment to succeed, to fail, to love, to lament. And it all happens in one just over an hour pilot.
Yeah.
I think he's great at pilots.
He is great at pilots, and it's tough to keep things going over the course of a series. But I think the West Wing, again, it didn't land. It didn't quite land the same way. He was already gone by time it ended. But
that's the thing. We can only talk about the first 4 seasons of the West Wing if we're talking about Aaron Sorkin project.
Yeah, it was the right show for the right time. We're coming out of, we're starting with the end of the Clinton presidency, which is a time of economic prosperity, but obviously a ton of scandal that followed and continues to follow Bill Clinton, and then goes into Bush as president, which not everybody was a fan of. So this show was kind of a balm for no matter what your ideology is.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this could be what it's like.
It was an alternate universe where alternate universe where all politicians are competent. It's just they disagree on policy.
Yeah. And then this show is we're in maybe the middle towards the end of his run when 9/11 happens. And,
that episode.
Obviously, he writes a standalone episode because I think at that time, everybody was looking for comfort at that time. Everybody wanted to feel better. Whether you lost somebody, whether you almost lost somebody, whether you lost nobody, we all were dealing with something around it, and we wanted to feel better. And knowing how this our best fictional president winner, like seeing, well, how would he deal with it? How would Jed Bartlett deal with this situation?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting episode. It's not the best episode, not by far. But
I loved it.
Really
Excelsis Deo, I think, is the best episode of that show ever. I loved that episode because it was so simple. It was a school group for those who haven't seen it, and correct me if my memory is not 100% on this, but it's a school group that was in the White House when the attack happened, and they all had to go and hunker down in a bunker together. And it was, now we're just doing a Q&A with the White House insiders and this school group who get to sit and ask, why is this happening and what are we going to do about it? You know what I mean? And it was such a simple way it was like a bottle episode, a simple way of executing that. Yeah. I think it was so deftly handled. I think that show so often handled things so sublimely, and just everything it wasn't always a happy ending, but even when it wasn't a happy ending, it was a satisfying ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, and plus you've got every character is so much fun. You've got CJ Craig, the Jackal. You've got Josh Lyman, the mouthy one. You've got Rob Lowe, the brilliant, handsome one. You've got, Jeb Bartlett, obviously the best president of cinema or television fiction.
And Stockard Channing as his wife.
Lily Tomlin as his secretary.
Well, at this point, I mean, Mrs. Lanningham. She was no Mrs. Lanningham, but she was fantastic.
Mrs. Lanningham, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, she came later on. Mrs. Lanningham was great.
Yeah. Leo McGarry. I mean, it's just a ton of actors with skill and gravitas and everything that they need.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic show. I'll put on stuff when I go to sleep. I'll listen to a book or podcast or whatever. Sometimes I will just put on The West Wing and I'll listen to it because, again, the rhythm of his dialogue and hearing, there's not a lot of yelling in it. And it just, there's something very soothing about it. Even with all the drama, it still feels idealized, even with all the horrific things that they deal with.
Yeah. And I just love all the characters. And it's one of those ones where the pilot was perfect. The pilot was absolutely perfect. It's one day, I think, the whole pilot takes place in. And I just remember the way they introduced Toby, the curmudgeon of the group. The way they introduce him is he's got his phone out on an airplane. And they're like, sir, you have to put your phone away. We're about to land the plane, or we're about to take off. And his reaction to that as a White House insider being told to put his phone away is such a brilliant introduction to this character.
Yeah.
And Allison Janney, I'll watch Allison Janney read a phone book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just great. They're just a cast of killers. They're all great.
And it won more. Look, if we're going objectively to try and find our objective answer. Yeah. It got more Emmys in its first season than any show had ever got in a single Emmys telecast. So
yeah,
like, come on.
So there you go. That is our winner for television. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we will talk about the 10 films. I made a mistake, not 11 films. The 10 films that Aaron Sorkin has written and brought to us. And we'll choose from one of those.
Before we go to the break, I just want to throw out, while we're talking about television, I gave you a line from Studio 60 that I loved. There was a line when I was watching Newsroom from the pilot episode that was a gut punch said by Sam Waterston, who is, by the way, brilliant on that show as the slightly drunk head of the network.
Yep.
But he has a line in there and it just hit me and I loved it. So I'll leave you to go to the break with this. You're older than you think. Don't find out the hard way. I love that line.
We'll be right back.
Soundheap with John Luke Roberts is a real podcast made up of fake podcasts. Like, if you had a cupboard in your lower back, what would you keep in it?
So I'm going to say mugs.
A little yogurt and a spoon.
A small handkerchief that was given to me by my grandmother on her deathbed.
Maybe some spare honey.
I'd keep batteries in it. I'd pretend to be a toy.
If I had a cupboard in my lower back, I'd probably fill it with spines.
If you had a cupboard in your lower back, what would you keep in it? Doesn't exist. We made it up for Soundheap with John Luke Roberts, an award-winning comedy podcast from Maximum Fun, made up of hundreds of stupid podcasts. Listen and subscribe to Soundheap with John Luke Roberts now.
Oh, darling, why won't you accept my love?
My dear, even though you are a duke, I could never love you. You borrowed a book from me and never returned it.
Save yourself from this terrible fate by listening to Reading Glasses.
We'll help you get those borrowed books back and solve all your other reader problems.
Reading Glasses, every Thursday on Maximum Fun.
Soundheap with John Luke Roberts is a real podcast made up of fake podcasts. Like, if you had a cupboard in your lower back, what would you keep in it?
So I'm going to say mugs.
A little yogurt and a spoon.
A small handkerchief that was given to me by my grandmother on her deathbed.
Maybe some spare honey.
I'd keep batteries in it. I'd pretend to be a toy.
If I had a cupboard in my lower back, I'd probably fill it with spines.
If you had a cupboard in your lower back, what would you keep in it? Doesn't exist. We made it up for Soundheap with John Luke Roberts, an award-winning comedy podcast from Maximum Fun, made up of hundreds of stupid podcasts. Listen and subscribe to Soundheap with John Luke Roberts now.
Oh, darling, why won't you accept my love?
My dear, even though you are a duke, I could never love you. You borrowed a book from me and never returned it.
Save yourself from this terrible fate by listening to Reading Glasses.
We'll help you get those borrowed books back and solve all your other reader problems.
Reading Glasses, every Thursday on Maximum Fun.
We are back, and it is time to dig into the motion picture work of Aaron Sorkin to go through these.
Hold on, before we do that, I did want to give a shout out to the theatrical work of Aaron Sorkin real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
On Broadway a couple of years ago, he did a great version of To Kill a Mockingbird. He put his spin on it. Harper Lee's estate was not entirely pleased to begin with, but it did get crazy critical acclaim. Jeff Daniels played Atticus Finch in it brilliantly. But my favorite play by Aaron Sorkin, if you get a chance to see it, go see it. If you get a chance to read it, read it. It's wonderful. It is called The Farnsworth Invention, and it is all about the birth of television from the point of view of Philo Farnsworth, namesake of the streaming service Philo, who was the, I believe, Nebraska or Kansas, just kid, who was a genius, savant who invented television, and David Sarnoff, the NBC or I believe it, NBC executive. Who also claimed to have invented television. And it was the first, it's got so much great Sorkin, dialogue in it, but it was the first play I ever read that had two narrators competing in telling the same story. Sometimes you'd see the same scene twice from two different narrators' points of view. It's a lot of fun. It's a brilliant play. Check it out. But on to the cinema.
On to the cinema. In chronological order, we have A Few Good Men, Malice, The American President, Charlie Wilson's War, The Social Network, Moneyball, Steve Jobs, Molly's Game, The Trial of the Chicago 7, and Being the Ricardos.
You know what I think he does so well? And I think he does it really well in Steve Jobs and in Being the Ricardos, which is these people are such larger than life characters. To tell their story the way like Richard Attenborough's Chaplin started from his early childhood through his death and told us this giant sweeping arc of a life. Sorkin didn't do that with either of those movies. He took a moment in time in the case of the Ricardos and I believe 3 moments in time in the case of Steve Jobs and told us everything we needed to know about them through just those moments. And I love that version of a biopic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really like Steve Jobs. I think it's a kind of an underrated Sorkin movie. I was not a big fan of Being the Ricardos, and I was very excited for it. But again, I feel like it missed a lot, or it glossed over some of the stuff, or like some of the things that I know reading about the making of I Love Lucy and the relationships that were happening off camera. You do get some of that, but I feel like I wanted a lot more than I got. And instead it focused on something different, which is okay. This is just a pattern I have, is I have an expectation of something. And when that expectation is either not met, or when it feels like it's just not met rather than upended and taking me in a brand new direction, then I can't stay with it. And I couldn't stay with Being the Ricardos for that reason. Nobody's fault.
I think one thing that he did in Being the Ricardos that is kind of a testament to his writing skill is that I could see why that movie may not have hit so hard and did not really do a ton, because the stakes were kind of low. You know what I mean? Like, the stakes of that movie were, will people like me? Does my audience still like me after this one thing came out? And that would have been in a sweeping biopic would have been a footnote. But in this, it's a testament to his ability that he could take what seems like a low stakes moment and raise the stakes so theatrically high with it. But I agree that it does not rise to the level of the stakes of some of his other works. That said, I just wanted to talk about that particular style of storytelling, which I think is a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
A biopic that's just a moment in time.
For sure. Steve Jobs is great. If you have not seen it, it is the launch of the Macintosh, then the launch of that computer that he made that was basically his bid to get back in Apple, and then the launch of the new iMac.
The iPhone, or was the iMac?
Those are the three. It was the iMac.
It's 3 keynotes.
It's
backstage at 3 keynotes.
But it's really his relationship with his daughter, Lisa, and how that progresses. And also, maybe more importantly, his relationship with Joanna Hoffman as assistant, played by Kate Winslet. And again, cast of killers. Jeff Daniels is there. Michael Stuhlbarg is there as Andy Hertzfeld.
Stuhlbarg is one of my favorite character actors.
So good.
He can do no wrong.
Michael Fassbender, of course. Seth Rogen is really good as Woz.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there to like. I don't know that it's the best movie he's ever done, but it's like just eminently watchable.
Yeah.
And it's like super, there's like almost no chance to breathe in that movie because everything is up against, it has to start. We have to get things going. We have too many people in here. The fire marshals are going to come in, and he's like, I want you to cover the exit signs because it's going to ruin everything. I want you to make sure that like everything's a ticking clock the whole time. And it's not until the end of the movie where he's willing to stop because his daughter is more important. And that's like a really good journey.
Mm-hmm.
Still not his best. I don't think it's his best movie, but it's a really good one. What do you think?
And another one that I don't think is his best, but is a lot of fun, is the Chicago 7.
Yes.
It's a great, cool, real historical story. He does a great job with true stories.
Yes.
Of adding depth that, I mean, sure, the actual human beings have, but the version of them that we see in the media does not by nature have, because we're just seeing them in the media. But he adds depth to these characters. I loved his Chicago 7 movie. He was nominated for an Oscar for it. Yeah, it's fun. It's a great cast.
Oh my gosh, the cast is killer. You have Eddie Redmayne, you have Sacha Baron Cohen, Jeremy Strong.
That was just going to say, it introduced me to Jeremy Strong. That was the first thing I saw Jeremy Strong in.
He's great as Jerry Rubin.
Yeah.
John Carroll Lynch, though, as David Dellinger.
Come on,
John Carroll
man.
Lynch is great in everything.
Yeah. It's a cast of absolutely brilliant. And that's the thing. Everybody wants to work with this guy. So you get these great actors delivering great performances. Yeah. It's a really well crafted, sizzling, kind of stylish version of that story.
Yeah.
You don't really, because there are so many main characters in that, I don't know that you get Sacha Baron Cohen as Abby Hoffman. There's so many characters in it. It really focuses on the event, I think, and the trial more so than the individual characters. The one that I want to put up for contention is one that is primarily, ostensibly it's about one guy, but I think the heart of the movie is another guy. And that is The Social Network, which I think he won the Oscar for that one.
Right.
Which also has a great line. I'm just going to keep dropping my favorite Sorkin lines into this.
Do it.
The first line of that movie. Did you know there are more people with genius IQs in China than there are people of any kind in the United States? It's a great opening line to a movie. And you think that Jesse Eisenberg, who's great in this movie, you think it's going to be a movie about Jesse Eisenberg or about Mark Zuckerberg, but really it's Andrew Garfield's character that is the heart of that movie.
He's great.
And God, he's good in that.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
All the actors playing the attorneys, Rashida Jones. I mean, everybody in it is great. They all play their parts really well.
It humanizes the thing.
Max Minghella is also fantastic in that.
Yeah.
It is really good. It's got to be a contender. For sure it is a contender. I don't know if it's
so
number
good.
one for me, but it's so good.
I think I have a personal number one.
I do want to talk about Charlie Wilson's War. I don't think it is the best one, but just any scene with Philip Seymour Hoffman in that movie is so good.
Yeah.
From the first time he meets Charlie Wilson and he keeps having to leave and come back in. Amy Adams is great as his lead. He's got all these like beautiful women that he's surrounding himself with that you think are airheads. And then when there's a crisis, they're all like the most competent people in the room. It's really, really good, really smart. Julia Roberts is great. The whole cast is fantastic.
That Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Right. The fact that Amy Adams is just a tertiary character. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Again, it's everybody wants to work with this guy. All of the great actors of their time, whatever that time is.
Yeah.
I would like to go back to a time prior to that.
Okay.
Where he worked with, around the same time he was writing the play version of this. I think he was working on the screenplay and the play at the same time. We've already mentioned it. Josh Malina was in it. And that is Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise, friend of this show, Kevin Pollak, Demi Moore, Kiefer Sutherland, Noah Wyle.
Yes.
In A Few Good Men.
Kevin Bacon,
winner of our, and JT Walsh. Winner of our, was it best movie monologue or best movie line?
I think it was best movie line.
Yeah. You Can't Handle the Truth. That whole scene.
Yes.
I think that A Few Good Men hits every one of the things that Sorkin does well perfectly. You know what I mean? The dialogue pops. The main characters all have their arc and their reason and their point of view, and you care about all of them. It's the best courtroom drama of all time.
Ooh, that's tough. That's tough because Inherit the Wind exists, but.
Sure. And 12 Angry Men exists, but I think it wins.
Absolutely possible. It's up there in the conversation, no doubt. Arguably, I don't look at it and go, no, these other two are way better. Like, oh yeah, it's way up there. Like, absolutely could be. I do think it is probably a perfect Sorkin movie, like the most Sorkin of everything. The pacing, everything about it. It moves super fast, but doesn't feel rushed. Where you wind up at the end, like it just everything about it. My dad, I think one of his favorite lines is, Tan Hut, there's an officer on deck. That like he loves that. And it's great. It gets you in the feels. It's fantastic.
You don't need a badge on your arm to have honor.
Yeah.
What did we do wrong? We did nothing wrong. Yes, we did. We were supposed to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Did you know, Hal Lublin and the people of the world out there? I talked a little, I mentioned that I think Aaron Sorkin does true stories very well. Yeah. Did you know that this is not straight from the imagination of Aaron Sorkin? This is from a Navy veteran who joined up with the Navy JAG or whatever it is, that Navy legal system, and flew down to Guantanamo Bay to defend a couple of Marines who had been accused of a hazing ritual. That their defense was it was at the orders of their commanding officer. Do you know who that person was?
Tell me.
Aaron Sorkin's sister, Deborah.
Oh, that's right. I feel like I did know it was somehow related. It was like a family story.
It's a family story. And he wrote it when he was in his 20s. Are you kidding me? Straight out of Syracuse.
Yeah.
Fresh out of Syracuse, he wrote A Few Good Men. I mean, coming out of the gate, strong.
I think the only thing that's in the film that's not in the play is the newspaper stand.
What's the newspaper stand?
A Rolling Stone gathers no moss. They just speak to each other in apherysms. Like that's just like a little transitional scene. But pretty much everything else is in there. It's so good.
Yeah.
The whole cat, everybody in the cat, just even you step outside and find here, sir. I'd like you to leave the room so we can talk about you behind your back. Like, it's so good. It is fantastic. I do want to talk about two more. One is The American President. The other is Moneyball, the only two we haven't talked about.
We haven't talked about Molly's Game.
Oh, Molly's Game is fine.
Which he also directed, and Jeremy Strong was in that, and Molly's Game is a lot of fun.
And Michael Cera's in it.
Idris Elba's great in that. Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
She's absolutely brilliant in that movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. I don't think it's better than Moneyball, and I don't think it's better than The American President. which is so charming. Again, that's like it was almost like that was the test pilot program for the West Wing.
Yeah.
Right down to Martin Sheen playing the chief of staff.
Yeah. It's it's
great.
It's just a fairy tale of a movie. You know what I mean? Wouldn't it be great if politics worked like this? Hey, here's an idea. What if the Bachelor president fell in love? You know what I mean? Like it's just it's just such a sweet, wonderful, kind and joyful notion. You know?
Yeah. And everything about it is charming. The speech he gives at the end when he finally stands up to Bob.
Yeah.
Is so good. And also, again, we've gone through this list of actors. And one thing these actors have in common is that they are really skilled at delivering this dialogue. And it is easier. I'm sure you'll agree to this as two people who did the Thrilling Adventure Hour for as long as we did and continue to, is that when writing is good, it's way easier. Like you already have your roadmap. So you still have to break it down and figure out what's going on, but it's not, you don't have to like dig in the sand too much to find it.
Right. You're not looking for subtext like it's a Pinter play. The subtext is there in all the clues. It's beautiful.
So I think, one guy who's masterful at delivering the dialogue is Michael J. Fox, who is really underrated, even as popular and successful as he's been, is kind of underrated as an actual actor. And I think he's great in this. He's just like fits him like a glove. You could have put him in the West Wing and it would have made sense.
Yeah. It's funny. It feels like in this movie, it's not the guy that played Marty McFly in an Aaron Sorkin movie. It's the guy that played Alex P. Keaton in a Sorkin movie.
Much closer to that. If Alex P. Keaton were a liberal, 100%.
Yeah.
I think Moneyball, the achievement of Moneyball is that it takes something that is probably not interesting to a lot of people.
Math.
Not everybody loves math and baseball.
Yeah.
Two things that people kind of get bored at, and he makes it fascinating.
Well, Brad Pitt helps.
Right, but he's got to deliver the lines, and he delivers them really well, as does Jonah Hill. This is like really the birth of Jonah Hill as an actor and his first Oscar nomination, and he's really good in it.
Yeah. He's doing Sorkin. They're all doing Sorkin.
So if you like baseball, it's really good. And even if you don't like baseball, you can still hook into it, and you still get swept up in the winning streak, and you're still heartbroken.
Yeah.
It's just so good. Everything from his first scene with the scouts to his last scene when he's meeting with the owner of the Red Sox. And he's like, they're sitting there. The owner's like, he talks about his assistant. It's like, it's her birthday. I'm thinking about getting her something. I don't know what to get her for a gift. What do you think? He's like, get her a scarf. Where would I get that? With all due respect, I just lost in the playoffs. Get her whatever the hell you want. Like, or whatever that line is. Just a great, again, really, really good. But I don't think anything touches A Few Good Men.
No. A Few Good Men is perfect.
Now, well,
here's the question.
Yes.
Is there something that touches A Few Good Men? And is that thing The West Wing? Boy, this is brutal. This is maybe arguably the greatest TV show of all time. One of the greatest TV shows of all time. Versus one of the greatest courtroom drama movies of all time.
It's really hard. It's such apples and oranges.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? I don't know that we've done this before.
What's that?
Co-champions.
No.
Not that it's a tie. How do you compare a TV show? Like, you might as well say
we can't do it. How? That's not the mandate.
Well, wait. Let's just talk about it.
All right.
Because, the television show, he's got 4 seasons. Really high highs. The lows aren't too low in that time. Then you have a movie that is about 90 minutes to 2 hours long. That is perfect in and of itself, but you never get the depth of relationship with the characters that you do in The West Wing because you don't have enough time.
Yeah.
You get to know them exactly as long as you need to feel the way you need to feel, to be invested the way you need to be invested to get you all the way to the end. The West Wing has so much time to build all these things. And we said best Aaron Sorkin project, so we have to do it. But to me, that's the difficulty. I don't think we can take a movie as perfect as it is and hold it up against 4 seasons of a television show and say it wins.
Let me throw this at you.
Okay.
Because I've seen A Few Good Men a million times. I've seen every episode of The West Wing.
Yep.
I will offer up The West Wing. I will offer up A Few Good Men as the victor of this for 2 reasons. One, It was the first thing that he did outside of projects for school.
Right.
It is absolutely young, raw Aaron Sorkin at his earliest, which happened to be a moment when he created a perfect courtroom drama. He created a perfect movie without years and years of practice writing great stuff before that. So I think that gives it a slight edge. His youth gives it a slight edge on that front. On the second front, I will throw out this, and I will look philosophically at our show. We've done episodes about Star Trek. Yeah. And at the end of our episode, we've said, maybe you've never seen a Star Trek movie before. Watch this one. Maybe you've never seen a Fast and the Furious movie before. This is the one to watch. You know what I mean? Like, we have a lot of times what we are doing, a service that we are doing as people that are creating this show is offering to the world. If you want the best version of this thing, why don't you try this version? And people recommend movies to me all the time. People recommend television shows to me all the time. The difference is when someone recommends a movie, like, watch this movie, it's going to take 2 hours of your life, versus watch this TV show, it's going to take 58 hours of your life. So if part of the mandate of this show is to offer to the people of the world a victor that they should check out, people got stuff to do. Give them the succinct 2-hour Aaron Sorkin at his young, perfect best in cinema form. What do you think of that?
I think that's a really good argument. It is probably way more accessible. I'm with it. I'm happy with either one.
I know they're asterisk on this one. They're both fantastic and brilliant.
Yeah, truly, people of the world. We mentioned your favorite somewhere in here, whether it was the winner or not. Your favorite Aaron Sorkin thing was in here somewhere. And guess what? You're not wrong. Nobody's wrong to have a favorite anything. But when we talk about the best in terms of accessibility, in terms of a white hot start to a career, you're not going to do much better than A Few Good Men. And if you're upset with me about it, I have one thing to say. I have no responsibility here whatsoever. Asked and answered.
Yeah. And you know what? If you don't like it, you can't handle the truth.
Booyah to you! You got burnt.
This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us via email at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or
go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/wegotThisPodcast. Talk about the projects and the scenes and the characters and the quotes that you love from Aaron Sorkin. And maybe if you're not a fan and you're interested in checking it out, everybody can make different recommendations for you. You can figure out how you want to dip your toe into that particular pool. That is facebook.com/group/wegotThisPodcast. Thank you to producer Ken Plume. You can support him at patreon.com/Ken Plume. He's got a bunch of fun shows for you to check out. And you can also support him by supporting us during Max Fun Drive or beyond. Thank you to researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for giving us an opportunity, as you do every week, to sit down and talk about things that we are passionate about. It is because of you. It is for you. It is with you that we do this. And I will leave you with one final Aaron Sorkin quote. Don't ever forget that you're a citizen of this world, and there are things you can do to lift the human spirit. Things that are easy, things that are free, things that you can do every day. Civility, respect, kindness, character. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody.
We got this.
We got this.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows supported
directly
by you.